Have you ever felt like leadership is just a string of tasks and meetings where everyone is looking for you for answers in the middle of all the problems? And you just ask yourself, what's going on? I I feel like right now is a special moment in history that there is an entirely new game happening. Everything feels like it's changing and like there are house rules that nobody told you about. And when I was in the throes of a toxic work environment, every single choice felt like it meant everything. And I remember sitting at the table. We had a table in our office, and I was prepping for a large accreditation review visit from the accrediting body. And I got a text from my leader telling me that I'm not going to do any presenting. He's going to do all of it. And my face got hot, and I shook my head in disbelief, and I basically just stopped breathing. And this is the story that I keep thinking of. It keeps coming back to me as I've had conversation after conversation with leaders experiencing change, that it feels like faster than a hockey puck, going around the ice. And that state of confusion, anger, disbelief, fear, coupled with the weight of responsibility and all of that. I am not prone to hyperbole unless it's going to be funny. But right now, all of that feels like we're in a true leadership crisis. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Welcome to the Joyosity podcast. And I know that seems strange. We're talking about Joyosity, leadership crisis, but hear me out. I'm really glad that you're here and that you are a part of this Joyosity community, whether you are a seasoned leader or you are just starting out. I'm so glad that you're here. And we base everything on three big ideas. They are actually bedrock beliefs. And one, true leadership requires more than just a checklist and surface level strategies. It requires a profound commitment to everything that makes us human. Number two, we use genuine curiosity, so we can create positive culture with all of the complex people, because that's all we've got. And number three, joy is the heartbeat of a healthy leader and a healthy organization. So we are putting joy in the center of everything that we do. I'm Jen Whitmer, keynote speaker, leadership consultant, and all around joy bringer, hosting you and guiding you along the way. And this week, I'm really hoping that we can address some of the big challenges that it takes to lead in a dynamic world. And I want you to be ready for the, I can use this right now moment. And also that deep insight that will transform you as not only a person and as a leader, but your whole life. So get ready, grab your multiple beverages. We're going to dive in. So, crisis. Is it really a crisis? I mean, aren't you just being a little bit dramatic, Jen? Nope, I'm really not. And I've got some statistics to share really briefly for those of you who are like, roll your eyes at statistics, but some of you were like, yeah, show me the receipts. So according to DDI, developing the next generation of leaders and retaining top talent outrank other business concerns. So like a recession, outperforming your competitors for market share, or navigating the current uncertainty. Developing leaders in the leadership pipeline and retaining the leaders that you have are the number one concern in businesses right now. The second one is that ineffective leaders is the number one reason why people want to leave their job within the first year. Number one reason. And only 40% of leaders rate their own organization's leadership quality as very good or excellent. You are probably feeling at least one of those statistics, like in your own experience. But the one piece of data that I keep coming back to, I think, is the demonstration of why we're in a leadership crisis more than any other. GHR reported that 82% of leaders are experiencing burnout at some level. That's 4 in 5 leaders. So I want you to think about the people around you. Who are the leaders that you're working with? Who are the 5 leaders that you work with the most? And if 4 of them are operating in burnout, doesn't that feel like a crisis? If they're incapable or so burned out, they're struggling to make healthy decisions. Like, who's making decisions? Who's managing the projects? Who's keeping the employees engaged? That level, that feels like a crisis to me. And there are so many reasons why we've arrived at this place. A global workplace culture obsessed with profit and measurement is one key reason. Recovering from the effects of a global pandemic, lack of diversity in leadership circles. All of these things are reasons of how we've gotten into this leadership crisis. But today, I want to talk about 2 leadership myths that are pervasive in our world right now, and what we can do to change them, because these are things that you can do to change right away. So number 1, the first myth is that leading means that you do all the work and you do it alone. And number 2, someone else makes you a leader. The truth is, leadership is always a team sport, and you can't lead anyone else until you lead yourself first. So when you start leading and you have to believe that you do it all alone, it is more than just you are not so great at it, doing all the things. You're going to burn out. When I was in high school, my 2 favorite races that I swam were the individual medley and the medley relay. Now, in the IM, if you're not a swimmer, you swim all 4 strokes. So I would swim fly, back, breast, free in that order by myself. I loved the variety. It was super fun. But it was a lot to train for. So I had to train on all 4 strokes all the time. I had to know all the touches and turns. So 2 hands for fly and breaststroke, 1 hand still on your back for backstroke, and, just get there first for freestyle. And all of the special kicks, which way you could turn, and I had to be good at all of them. And I would invariably fall behind in the backstroke because it was just my weakest stroke. And I'd have to make up for it in the last 2 legs. But the medley relay, so I swam fly, and all I had to do was, be ready, cheer for Karen as she raced down the backstroke leg, and I had to watch to make sure that I flew off the block as Jill touched from the breaststroke leg, and then swim fly. All I had to do was butterfly, and then touch with my 2 hands while Jen did the freestyle anchor leg. It was so much easier and honestly so much more fun and productive. The relay times are always faster than the individual medley times. So let's take that idea and put it into leadership. Why do we think we have to do it all alone? Even in the IM, it was clear that I was overcompensating with fly and trying to make up for my passable backstroke. And so when we come up with this idea that we have to do it, why are you doing it all alone? So where are you doing this in your leadership? Trying to stay with something that you're only passable at, or maybe you're actually, you're good at it, but it's not your best level work. I think those are problems, and they're more surface level problems with this myth. But I don't think it's the root problem. I think the real problem that's underneath is you're shoulding on yourself all the time. I should be able to do this. I should be the one. I think those come out of the worst parts of the American bootstrap mythology, that there is no successful Lone Ranger. We will never succeed all on our own. And the people who say that they did are lying. Not only do you stay ineffective because you're spending too much time doing stuff that isn't your best work, you also burn out because it's harder to do work you're not skilled at. It was so much more effort. I was breathing so much harder at the end of backstroke than I would at the end of fly because I was better at it. It was less effort. So, beyond the actual tasks that you do as a leader, you also need community. Again, there is no successful Lone Ranger, but leadership can be really lonely. You get up to a certain position, and the people that used to be your peers are now the people that you're in charge of and hold responsibility over, and it can create some difficult relational dynamics. And so you need a community around you, as well as developing those relationships on your team. So I think that you need 4 different types of people in your leadership. And I've heard this from several different leaders. I've adapted a little bit from Kim Kaup. But first is that you need a mentor. And I always think having somebody who is in your field as a mentor is really helpful, but also possibly somebody who's not in your field, but they're ahead of you in life. So if you're in that like first leadership role as your first manager, go find the director, go find the vice president that is ahead of you in life, even if they're not in your company, but they can mentor you and say, here's how I did that, and encourage you along the way. The second type of person that you need in your leadership circle, some people call it your board of directors, your own personal board of directors, is a coach. And the coach is all about your development. They don't need to be in your field. They do need to be good at developing people. So I have a program that I call the Joyosity Jumpstart, and it's at jenwhitmer.com/jumpstart. And it's a one-time session, because sometimes committing to longer and finding a coach can be daunting. You're like, I'm already suffering from decision fatigue. Now I have to choose the right coach. So this is a one-time session that is very clear on what we do and how I coach you. One, we're going to clarify your goals, because when you think you have to do it by yourself, you can get real fuzzy on your goals because no one else is helping you clarify that. And you can't make a plan until you know where you want to go. Number 2, I will help you figure out what's working and what's not. We use the Joyosity Compass to guide us, but it's a way to have a framework to say, okay, this part's going well, this isn't, and helping you observe your own life. Sometimes it's really hard to see because you're in the middle of it. You can't see. You're literally in the weeds and you cannot see the flower garden. And so the third thing that we do is label the things that are preventing you from getting what you want. What are the roadblocks that are in your way so you can develop a plan and something that you can actually commit to? That's the role of a coach in your life. And I do that with the Joyosity Leadership Lab over time. But the Jumpstart sessions are so helpful because they're clarity in the moment. It is a quick, we spend an hour together and get this done. And that is a space when you feel like you're in crisis and you feel like you're alone that can be so life-giving. So a mentor, a coach. So thinking about that Jumpstart session. Another person that you want on your board of directors or your leadership circle is a sponsor. And often this is someone in your field who is mentioning you in rooms you're not in. They're like, yes, absolutely. This would be a great person to put in that role. And finding a sponsor means you have developed a relationship with them and they have seen your work and you've asked for that. Are you willing to say things like this? Will you do that? I have to do that in some of the strangest ways. I feel like I had a phone call this morning with somebody who I'm always like chatty and like, who are you and how are you? And she's like, okay, so tell me about what you do, because I'm really excited to share about with this leadership group within the bank. And then we have this special program at the bank that I think you'd be a great speaker for. And it was great. Like, she was a sponsor for me, but I had to talk to her about it and what I do. So you get a sponsor who will help mention you in rooms that you're not in. And then the last group you want are peers. Peers who are at your level that you can support and ask for support, and that mutuality of peers is incredibly helpful. You need that board of directors. The best time to set it up was when you're not in crisis. The next best time to set it up is right now. Because when you're in crisis, everything feels heavier, which is why you need people in that moment even more than when things feel all smooth and easygoing. So that myth that leading means that you should do all the work, you should go it alone, you should be able to do it, is just a lie. The truth is leadership is always a team sport, and you need those people around you. So let's look for a second at that second myth. Someone else makes you a leader. And so after I left that toxic work environment, I just showed to give you one little tiny example, but I was pretty beat down. The part of the toxicity was an intentional eroding of the trust that I had in myself and my ability to lead. There was gaslighting, siloing, intentional undermining of decisions, and even some actual sabotage that it took me out, my confidence and my trust in myself. And it permeated beyond the walls of that organization. And so one day, not long after I had left, I was standing in Home Goods and looking at lamps, and I was turning over all the options in my mind. There were these large table lamps that I wanted for our living room end tables. But okay, were they the right size? Did I bring the right measurements? They're kind of metallic. They're not really clear. Is that going to look right? Is that the right color? What about the price? I'm at Home Goods, but do I really want to spend that much on these lamps? And okay, were the cords the right length? Or were they going to be able to reach the outlets? Would the kids like them? And would guests think they looked right with our gray sofas? And I really should ask, I should ask these couple people before I make this big of a decision. I remember standing in the lamp aisle thinking, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? I've been paralyzed for 20 minutes trying to make a decision about lamps. I get to decide. I can make this decision on my own. I know what I like, the size that I need, what will work in the room. I've gathered the right information. And if I don't like them, I can return them. Get the lamps. I know that sounds odd, but these lamps were really the beginning of restoring my own self-trust and self-leadership. Someone may promote you or assign you to a role that has responsibility. Sometimes you might get voluntold into that role, but leading, that's your choice. And I want you to take radical ownership of leading yourself. And that starts with incredibly small things. So here's just a couple questions to get you started. If you are going to lead yourself, start looking at, where are you stuck in indecision right now? Or maybe you're waiting for an adultier adult to come in and solve that? Or are you abdicating your responsibility to lead and own the outcomes of that decision and own the impact of that decision? Leading yourself can sometimes seem in opposition to leadership being a team sport, but they're actually concepts that complement one another. They fit together. You need other people to help you grow and encourage you in your self-leadership, especially in crisis. You need someone to reflect back to you that you can do this. There's a great quote that says that friendship is about the people who sing your song back to you when you've forgotten the words. That's what your leadership council can be like when you are struggling with your own self-leadership. And you, over time, develop your own self-efficacy, which is a fancy word for confidence. But coaching and feedback is always a part of confidence. It's part of self-efficacy. So even in this moment, me just asking you those couple questions, where are you stuck in indecision right now, is encouraging your self-leadership, but based in community with me and others. And it's why, again, I love those jumpstart sessions. I get to guide and be a part of it, part of that community, but you're the one that's leading yourself and making the decisions. So the myth that someone else makes you a leader is part of why we're in crisis. The truth, you lead yourself before you lead anyone else. Do that, and you develop the skills to be a powerful and effective leader. And I know it's not easy. I even have in the introductions when I come as a keynote speaker, and in the introduction, it talks about the different groups that I've led, the positions that I've held, but it ends with, and hardest of all, leading herself. Because it's true. We are the hardest people to manage. So as we talk about solving a leadership crisis this month and how do we get out and start to change this crisis, it can be really tempting to focus on the swirl of all the things in our current circumstances. There is no denying that there is a lot happening right now that feels like that hockey puck going everywhere. And so much of it is out of your control, which can make you feel powerless and pervade everything, much like making the decision about the lamps. So let's focus on these two truths and just start to eradicate this myth in the world. So the first truth, that leadership is always a team sport, and you lead yourself before you lead anyone else, and they go together. So this episode is my challenge to you, but it's really just the beginning of what we're talking about this month. Jo Saxton is my guest this month. She's coming back over the next couple of weeks, and we get to go deeper on how do we navigate today's leadership crisis over the next few episodes. And in the first one, Jo and I are going to talk about where is this coming from? What is this hidden leadership crisis, and why those statistics are there? Why do so many people feel overwhelmed? Why is this happening? And number two, we've got some practical ways for you to diagnose that overwhelm, to really embrace that idea of self-leadership and step into the leader that feels more effortless, like you're the one swimming fly, and you're not exhausting yourself and all the things that you're not really meant to be doing. So make sure that you are following the podcast, that you are subscribed so you don't miss these conversations, because we're going to be discussing these leadership shifts that you need right now in this very moment. So I want you to think about, again, some action steps that you can take from this. What's something you've been thinking about and avoiding? And so what's your next move? How are you going to do that? And identify one person, that mentor, coach, peer, and sponsor that you can ask to be a part of your personal board of directors, your leadership council, whatever you'd like to call it. But that community, that team that comes around you, that helps you lead your team and yourself well. And again, I would love to talk to you about the Joyosity Jumpstart. I am focused on completing my book manuscript in the month of March, so I only have spaces for 5 Jumpstart sessions right now. So if you think your next step is to really get a guide like me to help you clarify your goals, to identify what's working and what's not, and label the roadblocks so you can create a plan, now's the time, because I only have 5. And they're also at a special rate right now. So it's at jenwhitmer.com/jumpstart. And that jumpstart can help you out of when it feels like you're in a stall. That's why I call them jumpstarts, because the crisis is real. Like, we're not pretending that this isn't happening. And together, I believe that we can bring more joy to work, to start to solve this crisis when you are taking charge of your own leadership, that radical ownership in your own leadership, and you're doing it with others. So let's do it together. So let me put my coach hat on for just a moment. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them what you're going to do. Check the show notes for all the links and connect with us on LinkedIn and all the other socials, or just, drop me an email at Jen with 2 N's at jenwhitmer.com. We want to keep this conversation going with you.
I know your earballs have a lot coming at them, so thank you for listening to the Joyosity podcast and being a part of our community. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people join us in the movement to create positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.